welcome you all to episode 6, I believe. My goodness, that it is flying by. And today we are going to talk about the gathering space. Now, in some ways, this is the biggest kind of visual change in our parish building. Outside of maybe having to repaint the ceiling, but I think this is going to have a big impact. And so I think there's a lot of nervousness about it, but I think it was really born from the parish, for the parish, and it's turned out beautiful, as we'll talk about. So Alan, I just do want to kind of start with, where did this idea come from for like a gathering space in the back of church?
Well, the one of the main things that we did as a committee, it took us several years to figure out just really what the issues were in the church.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time on the infrastructure, and then we said, okay, now what about the sacred space? What about the worship space? And so we actually did a lot of research, got a lot of information from our historical evaluations, as well as we did some site visits to other parishes. And there is a book developed by the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, and it's entitled Built of Living Stones in Architecture and Worship. In that document, our committee went through, and you were part of that. We studied that book in terms of, really, what are those types of things we should be thinking about. And then, of course, we went down to Evansville and we saw the gathering space in the cathedral, which is really breathtaking, I think. Mm-hmm. But we also had a lot of parish listening sessions in terms of what are their needs. We had a strategic planning process that we went through. So there was just a lot of different things that we studied and looked at and prayed about, because this was very, it's a major thing in our church. So that vision document was our basis then for giving that to the architect, saying, okay, this is what we heard from our parishioners. This is what our committee has kind of surmised from our site visits. So this is what we are thinking about.
Yeah.
So that document was given to our architect for the vision, and that's really set the direction for him to take us forward.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like, I think we'd all agree. I think culture's changed a lot,
right.
And I always say that we're trying to kind of make sure we're addressing the needs of our time right now. And back in the day when the church was built, this town was still very Catholic, but it was 100% Catholic. Right. And you had all these community events and activities and groups that really supported the community life of the parish. You had all of these incredible, the Knights of Columbus were up there, the Heights and the Lady Sedada, all of these incredible ones that are still present, and we should hopefully keep growing and moving forward with them. But because it was so culturally Catholic, you didn't need a place to gather.
Right.
But now we're at the point, kind of in 2021, where our town, our country, our culture is just so different. We've really lost the fiber of society that kind of held people together. And so this is kind of one way to say, we need to create a community space in a very intentional way as well.
And that's our committee. I talked about the strategic planning process, and overwhelming the number one point that came out is that we want it to be a very welcoming, open community, and that drives us to thinking about a welcoming center. But that being such a historical, beautiful, gift from our ancestors, we had a lot of thought about making sure we preserve that culture, that heritage, and to put something on the inside of our church, it had to fit, not just something we added this on. So that part too, and that's really where I think our architect. That's what they do. So.
Yeah. And Father Eugene, we came in, and this was kind of mid-process. They had talked a lot about this, and at first there was some hesitation on your end, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Father. Keeping the the integrity of the beauty of the traditional part of the church, wanting to preserve that was a real concern. To put something in like this. I did have some real concerns. I think some of the things that alleviated the concerns was one, seeing St. Ben's narthex and how beautiful, the work they had done in it, year and a half ago. to add that in and still kept preserve the traditional beauty of the church. And also, I think the thing that was the need I saw, because somebody said, well, you want to know where young families can take their children if they want to step out of church or out of the pew area. Well, I walked over into the reconciliation room and saw that there was just a little hole window for them to be able to see Mass going on. I said, well, we've got to do better than this for our young families. And so it started to make some real sense. And then Michael, the architect, came back with some drawings, which I think are going to be in later for you to see. And I saw how you really, the wall really looks like it's almost been there the whole time if you look at it, what he's done. So I think it's really looks like it fits. I think it's going to, like Alan said, keep our sacred space, but yet have a space for young families and for all people if they want to step out for funerals, for viewing. There's room there to have the casket back there, to be able to get the casket around and up front. I think we've addressed and we've looked that over. So I think it's really going to be a great addition to the church and just add to it. It's also going to help with the sound. Even we have a lot of bounce with the stones, with the sandstone or this wood. It'll kind of help keep it from bouncing as much and actually help the hearing and that area too somewhat. So the more I looked at it, it really seemed like a good idea, and I'm excited about adding this to St. Joe Church.
Yeah, I think when we first kind of got here, there seemed to be a slight tension between like a space to pray and a space to invite and welcome people in, and even just to little things like we're doing more in the parish as far as events and classes and retreats. And so when people would come, we really couldn't have someone like kind of set up and back and discussing those things before or after Mass, because you would hear that when they were trying to pray the rosary. And so in some ways we're trying to preserve both the spot where people can pray, at the same time giving them a space where they can encounter Christ through the events we have at the parish. And this is, everyone talks about like the Sunday experience. If you kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd. And so, especially on church stuff, so I read and watch a lot of YouTube videos about how to engage parishioners or members of your church the best. And that Sunday experience is the place that's the first step. And so we really needed a space, and I think you're right. So let's talk about the design, because I do think you're right. When the designs kind of came through, that was when the moment you're like, okay, like this is turning out to be really a beautiful space. Mm-hmm. And so I'll hopefully have some pictures. Let's look first kind of, if we're looking when we first kind of get into the space, I'll show them this picture so they know what I'm talking about. You'll hopefully have it up on there. When we first walk in, you're going to see this beautiful kind of glass wall that's going to separate the space. And that's going to functional in two ways, right? It's going to create a new area for our young families just to take their kids, if they need to calm down, take them back there, have them calm down, and then go back to Mass instead of going into that little cry room. It also really makes the centrality of the baptismal font really wonderful. I think that's really, really beautiful.
The altar behind it.
Yeah, And one of the details, it's currently in our church, but maybe it's lost a little bit, but in this design, about the connection between the baptismal font and the altar. Because really, like, the baptismal font, your entrance into church, but all of our goal is to be gathered around the altar, And so it's a really beautiful connection. And what we were able to do with that flooring, with the terrazzo floor, kind of extend this out. It's kind of lost right now because it's just kind of, the baptismal font is kind of hovering on that pool of green carpet. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really beautiful touch and things like that. And it has that classic, very noble design to it. Yeah. I do remember one story. It was one of those weeks we were like talking about it, and you and I, Father Eugene, and at one point, like we were eating dinner, you're like, you just need to go over there and like sit in that cry room. And so like I think you made me get up from dinner and like we're just gonna go look at it right now, It's like because you just knew like after you had done that, you're like, we have to do kind of better if we're gonna keep attracting those young families, and I think it's really beautiful. So awesome. So you'll see this beautiful wall, but the glass work, it's gonna look, they're huge. you have a huge church. So
Mhm.
I think that's fantastic. And then it's also going to create kind of spaces to kind of get rid of some of those tables in back, to have some nooks and crannies where we can put, really can put like pamphlets or registration areas and things like that. Instead of, I feel like, especially during COVID right now, we just have tons of tables and stuff on those tables. And it kind of looks cluttery back there.
Mm-hmm.
Where with this new design, we're going to have some nice cabinets and we're going to tuck things away in a way that really cleans the space up and really kind of invites people into kind of the beauty of our church, not just stopping for all the just trinkets we kind of have laying around. So, yeah, that's wonderful. And then it's also going to help us. We're going to be able to redo bathrooms. We're going to be able to make a new confessional in back for us. That'll be just a little bit more welcoming. Has some beautiful details with that. I also create a new usher closet with some better storage. Right now, not a lot of people maybe go into the usher's closet, but if you go in there, it's just like, 9-foot ceilings, stem, it's all the way to the choir loft, and it's just a shelf all the way up. And I don't think anyone's touched the top shelf since Father Kundek put the stuff there. That stuff is original to him, And so it's going to be just really help us with our storage and a lot of those areas.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
And new steps. The existing spiral staircase will be taken out and new steps built on either side up to code, safer.
Yeah.
Easier for folks to.
Yeah, that was a big kind of discussion point. Getting the choir up there. Then those spiral staircases, they're really cool. And I'm sure that if a parishioner wants them, we will take them out and they can do what they will with them, within reason. No go crazy.
We accept donations.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we got for a small nominal fee. You can. Yeah, it's gonna be. But those stairs, they did a really nice job of integrating those into a nice seamless way. I think the design. I know one time the architect brought in a little model of the gathering space, so we could kind of visualize it really well, and you're right. He did such a good job fitting it into the space. And we talked a little about funerals. There was a lot of concern with getting the casket in and out of the church, and how's that going to work. We've had a lot more people doing visitations in the back of church. And first, I want to say, like, the design took that into account. They actually had, on their architectural software, they had showed us the squares by which, like, what a normal casket would be sized at, and they showed us how they would get around and how much room there was back there. But it's also going to help us when we do have a visitation, because we're going to be able to put the body there, let everyone kind of come in, but still kind of keep that sacred space. Because I had one, it was wonderful, and I love the sound of families loving each other. But man, it kind of sounded like a train station in our church. I walked back there and I was like, who is back there? And so I think that'll really help keep that sacred space sacred, but also kind of help keep that visitation space visible.
Yeah, I've been much more aware of that separation of the sacred space, because now if you walk in church, sometimes it gets kind of rowdy back there. But you can see people that are up there and they kind of turn around because they're trying to pray. And I guess I'm more aware that we are disturbing them when we're back there. So this will help that.
Yeah, and it's particularly, like, I noticed a lot. We're getting nicer weather right now, but when it was cool out, all of our ushers for COVID had to be inside. All the instructions had to be given kind of inside and directions, and so it was just a lot of chatter. And that really does kind of detract from that moment of silence and prayer to kind of get people into that moment of reflection before we offer the sacrifice of the Mass. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I think, and you mentioned again the sound, which I do think is super important, because this, in some ways, is a better alternative. I know it might not. Seems like an expensive alternative, but it's two purposes. We do have that sound that bounces around our stone a lot. We could have put industrial sound boards up, but we all kind of saw pictures, and it was like, oh, that would have looked awful. I mean, I compared it. It would almost be like strapping a mattress to the wall. It's just like a giant, and like no one would like that. It would just be awful. But this allows us to kind of integrate it into the archways with some it's going to be perforated faux wood It looks really beautiful, and it's going to be high enough up that you're not going to notice that there's perforations on it, but it's going to be enough to really soak in that sound. So I would say it's much better than mattresses on our wall.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I would say so.
So as a person who spent a lot of time in like white padded rooms in the insane asylum, I can assure you, we're going to want this much more. So yeah, that's a joke, I hope. So there's a lot of design elements that went into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out beautiful. I mean, it really did. And I think one thing we didn't mention, but it's really kind of, I think it's going to be probably one of the nicest features, is we're going to bring that nativity window forward to above the main doors. And so, because right now, that nativity window is gorgeous. The multiplication of loaves as the first window when you walk up over the main doors, and you kind of walk in that little space, and you got they're all kind of so close together, you kind of, they get lost, you know? And so I think it's going to be beautiful to kind of pull that wonderful window out as another kind of just accent piece.
And that glass there, it's very tastefully done with the arches.
Yeah.
And wood structures.
Yeah. No, I think the design really did turn out well on that.
I do think so.
I had a call from a lady last Sunday, and she said, back in the day, did you know that there was a window behind the altar? And I said, yes, it's in the back of church now. And she says, have you all thought about putting that back? So, we did a little bit.
That's right, yeah, we talked about it quite a bit, yeah. Yeah. Actually, I found this old picture. I'm going to see if I can find it again. I don't know where I found it. At one point, it looked like in the picture, there was a wood screen that divided the back area with the front. I don't know. I'll have to see if I can find it. It was this weird, I shouldn't say weird, that's judgmental, I guess, but it was like this massive arch, and then on the two sides there was the baptismal shrine, and then a shrine, I think of maybe it was Christ, the risen Lord, or something like that. It was beautiful. We have pictures downstairs of those two spaces, I think. But then they had this kind of wooden screen, it looked like in the picture. It's really hard to see. I'll see if I can find it. If I can't on this video, I'll see if I can try to dig it out for maybe the next couple, because it really was like, they also kind of had a gathering space of sorts, So I'll see if I can dig out those pictures. In my 2 years here, I've done a lot of digging in the archive room, which is a wonderful experience, but there's a lot in there. It's really awesome. Cool. Okay, we'll move on. I promise. Sorry, I digress. There's a kind of a last thing that really helps us with this gathering space. And that is if you're in the choir, or if you're the organist, Van knows this very well, our loft is beginning, or has always, had a little bounce to it.
Right.
And I think at some point we thought, maybe we should, that's probably not the best thing in the world to have the thing that's holding our beautiful organ up have bounce to it. And so this is going to secure that choir loft a lot. And it's also going to expand it so we can add more musicians up there. So you can almost imagine having 4 trumpets, or 3 trumpets and a baritone or trombone, brass pieces and woodwind pieces, right? Giving that space in that choir loft for really a much broader, larger choir, larger instrumental base. I think that'd be really beautiful. And I'll show a picture of that. Here, I'll show you the picture now. Although you can see kind of the area in which they can add seating, stabilize the choir loft so there's no more bounce.
Right.
And you've been up there when it's bouncing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can feel it.
Yeah, it's not small.
No, you just walk and you.
Yeah.
And then understand when Van pushes the pedal,
it
bounces.
Yeah.
It's stable. I mean, it's not.
Right, it's not going to fall down tomorrow.
Issue, but that's addressing that enables us to really reconfigure that thing. It has to be reworked.
Yeah. That's the thing with that bounce. It's fine right now, but you're 50 years down the road, right? That's right. So we were going to have to make sure that was stable. So no matter what this renovation looked like, the choir loft was going to have to be addressed. And
we've seen some splitting or some checking of the beams in the attic, so I suspect there's some of that splitting of the beams there as well. So which may be over time, as weaken that possibly.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm no longer near, but
Yeah, none of us are actually professionals, but we do know there's a huge bounce,
right,
and not insignificant, and this will really secure that. And also, let us expand it so we can get more choir members or more instruments up there and kind of give them a beautiful place to sing. So, well, fantastic. Well, that's going to lead us perfectly into the next episode, which we're going to talk a little bit more about the loft area, the musical spaces, and how we're going to kind of address some of those things as well. So, is there anything else that we left out? I think we've gone through my notes, and
I think we've,
I think you've covered it all.
yes, you have.
yeah.
I went down my list as well.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, so just keep looking at those pictures and keep praying that the campaign is doing really well. So far, it's coming in pretty well, but we've got a long way to go. It's just a lot of money. But thank you for everyone who's kind of participated. And yeah, share this video if you really think that like someone else you've heard maybe these rumors floating about like they're going to do this or that, and hopefully we've answered some questions and said, well, they're actually not doing that. So be sure to share this video on or share one of the other videos on to those people to kind of help them find the answers they need, because that's what we want to do. We just want to make sure everyone knows what's going on. So awesome. We'll see you next time, okay?